All right. So, first Friday of the month, it's book club day. And we're going to talk about Priory of the Orange Tree. This was our January book. I'm very proud of all of you. I'm very proud of all of you that read this book. For choosing this book, first of all. She thick. She do be hefty. And I'm very proud of all of you for reading it. And Rachel, hello! Hello, you did make it just in time. If you're watching this on YouTube, I apologize for the decreased camera quality. There have been issues lately. It will be fixed next month, so hopefully. And if you're watching on stream, you're aware, and it will be fixed when it's fixed. Hello, 90-minute YouTube video. So here's the thing. What a great segue into this. So, usually, what has been happening, and what I realized was happening as I was editing so many of our book club videos, is that when I would give my review, I would kind of talk through the whole plot, and we would just, like, discuss it together. We would, like, discuss the whole plot. Let me tell you, we're not gonna do that today. And there are two reasons for that. One is that there are potentially a lot more reviews than we usually have. So to cut down on time here on stream, or yeah, here on the live stream, I'm going to try and keep my section a little bit shorter. The other reason, number two, is that generally when we do our book club reviews and when I talk through these books, I have just read it. I usually wait until the very last second to read our book club book so that it's like perfectly fresh in my head, which is why I'm generally able to talk through the whole plot because I remember every single beat of it. However, as of tomorrow, it will have been 2 months since I read this. So it's not quite as clear in my brain, which is potentially a good thing because it means I can't sit here and talk for 8 hours about every little thing. I can talk through what I liked, the things that I particularly liked or didn't like, that they're all liked. I didn't particularly not like anything. But yeah, so it's been 2 days, 2 months since I read this, so it's a little not as fresh. And all that's left really are like the big beats, the big things that I like, my big thoughts, the big things that I really liked. And I don't even like, there's nowhere to start with this that isn't 5 stars. Fucking 5 out of 5 stars. This book is incredible. This book is so good. So I had this kind of on my like want to read list for well over a year. And I would see it at the bookstore and they almost always only had paperback, but they did occasionally have a hardcover. But I would always see it at the store and I would look at it and I would see the dragon on the cover and I knew a little bit about it and I was like, I know I should read this book. I know I will like this book. But this scared the shit out of me, which doesn't make any sense. By the way, this is not the longest book I've read. I don't even, is it in the top 5? It's probably in the top 5, maybe. But like, anyway, something about the size of this book intimidated the shit out of me. And so I never got around to reading it. And I was like, I don't know. Like, and now I did read it and I'm really mad at myself for waiting a year. Why the fuck did I wait a year to read this book? And the only reason that I finally settled on it was that we were reading Empire of the Vampire. Me and Emily and Allie were reading Empire of the Vampire, and it's garbage, and we're not even gonna get into that. But I was like, we just sat through 700 pages of like the most misogynist bullshit we've ever seen in our lives. We truly owe it to ourselves to read the 800-page lesbians and dragons fantasy book because we need a palate cleanser. And that's what we did. We were like, we sat through Empire of the Vampire. We are no longer going to be afraid of this. We owe it to ourselves. We owe it to women everywhere to read this book. And it was literally the best decision that we've ever had. Oh my God. Oh my God. When I tell you my biggest, like, impression coming out of this book is this is what high fantasy is supposed to be. This book is, this author, this book, this story, this is what epic high fantasy should be. This is like my peak pinnacle. I think this might be the best fantasy book I've ever read in my life. This is easily one of the best books I've ever read. I was so invested in every single piece of this book. This is everything from the, like, the world building, like the physical world, like, not even just like the, you know, cultural systems and the magic and all that, but like the physical world, the locations in this book, I think what I should have done is read my own Goodreads review before I did this. That would have been the smart thing to do. We've had this discussion before. But I know one of the things that I said in my Goodreads review is that as somebody who cannot visualize, like I physically can't visualize anything, fucking blank slate up here, this is as close as I think I can get or will ever get to being able to see a place in my head. Because the locations in this book are so well described and like well fleshed out, and they feel very real and they feel very different. So like Innis feels wildly different from Seiki, which feels wildly different from, what is it, Iskalin. Like all of these places feel like they just feel real and they feel fleshed out and they feel like they have so much depth. And I think depth is like the big thing, which is good from a book this size, like to get, you know, you're like, everything is really detailed. Everything is really just in depth. Everything feels like she had a purpose. She had a purpose for everything in this book, and it all like mattered and it all worked well together and it all meshed. So all of these places that she created have different cultures and different beliefs and different religions, and yet they all feel like they still fit in the same world. And it just, I don't know how she did it. I don't know how she does it. I have no idea. But she made like just the perfect world. I just believed everything. I'm like, dragons? I believe it. Magic? I believe it. Like magical orange trees? I totally believe it. Oh my god, it was so good. It doesn't help that I haven't read this in 2 months, and like I started to take notes earlier today and then I didn't finish them, and now I don't even have the ones that I started up. So, okay, let me think about what's the most important thing that I loved about this book. I don't know how she does it, but like her writing style, I love it. I love it. Her pacing was amazing. Her like the when she chose to switch points of view, I thought worked every time. Okay. Let me try and focus on something. So characters. We're gonna start characters, all right? So I think just to get it out of the way, I think we can kind of all agree, or most of us from what I could tell in Discord can all agree, Nicolaes is the worst character. He's just the worst character that you care the least about. All of the characters in this book, you're like, Id, love her. Sabran, love her. When you talk about character development, can we talk about the fact that I hated Sabran? When this book started, I hated her. And I was like, how am I going to get to a point where I like this one? The character development that she wrote for Sabran. Id, you love. Sabran, you learn to love. Tanae, you love even when you hate her. Like, Loth, you love. But fucking Nicolaes, man. You never like Nicolaes. But here's what gets me about him. Okay? You're not really supposed to. And she doesn't write him to be this character that you're gonna love to go back to time and time again. And one of my favorite things about this is that all of her characters are fallible. I think Tanae is a really good version of that, or a really good example of that, because you like Tanae. Generally, you know, you're supposed to like Tanae as a character, but she is at times very incredibly selfish. She is incredibly selfish. She is kind of out for herself in a lot of things. She makes big mistakes that are big decisions that turn out to be kind of shitty to get, you know, what she wants, even when she's trying to do the right thing or the wrong thing. Like, Tanae is a great example of having a fallible character that you still love. But I like that Nicolaes is in there too, because you straight up just don't like him. You just don't like him. He's compared to everybody else. But what I really like, and I think that she was really good at, is that I think she was A, aware of that, B, it was intentional, and because of that, she balances his chapters really well, in my opinion. I think he's more involved in the like earlier parts of the book. You kind of get more of him, but as time goes on, you see him less and less, and at a certain point, I think there are 2 points in the book, you go over 100 pages without ever hearing from Nicolaes. Because I think she recognized, and he served his purpose, but she recognized that, you know, you weren't going to want to read about him all the time. You weren't going to be super happy to go back to him all the time. So she got to a point where his story was established. It was being told. You knew what was going on with it. And then she could put him away. She could put him away, and she could come back to him when he was necessary and not have to keep going there over and over again to remind you that he exists. Nicolaes gave you the same feeling you had reading the Sansa chapters in the first 2 Game of Thrones. I groaned whenever I saw his name. I'm kind of with you. Like, we would get to him, and I wasn't, like, I wasn't excited to see him. But when you get to that point where, like, I got to a point where I just trusted her. I trusted her and the story that she was telling. Like, halfway through this book, I was like, you could do whatever you want to me, girl. Like, you could throw whatever you want in this book at me, and I will take it because I fucking trust you to know what you're doing and to be right and to just, I trust you. So by that point, I was like, if you're showing me Nicolaes at this point, you have a reason for it. He has to be here. So I got to that point with him. So between him, Tanae, Iad, and Sabran, I think there's a really, really great range of characters there and motivations and characters who are ultimately very good. I think Iad is a very good character. She's a good person. Most of the decisions that she makes are good decisions. She, you know, makes mistakes the same way everybody else did, but she is your general, like, good character. And then you have somebody like Tanae, who you like, but you also recognize is a bad person sometimes and is very much out for herself and what she wants. And then you have somebody like Nicolaes, who you're just like, I fucking hate this guy. But the thing that Nicolaes has that I did not expect this book to make me cry over Nicolaes, his backstory with Jen Art. That shit got me every time. Every time we talked about Jen Art and his past, I was like, I get it. I get why you have become this horrible, cynical, awful person because you, like, he just didn't have anything to live for anymore. Like, I think he's having a conversation with Layla on the ship, and she says something to the effect of, like, you know, this guy that you loved, he wouldn't want you to go on like this. You know, would he want this to be your life? And he's like, I don't think you understand. I don't want a life without this guy. And you're like, oh, that's why you turned into who you turned into, because you just don't want to be around anymore. And he, like, that just became his whole thing. Wonderful to see women with diverse personalities in a high fantasy book. I didn't even talk about the women in this book yet, because when I tell you, this is why I read books by women. This book is by women, about women, for women. Oh my god, the women, just, I love when women, that's it, I love when women. Everything about this book is beautiful from, like, a women's fantasy, or like a fantasy written by women point of view, but I think my favorite example of it is Sabran's character, and Sabran's character arc, because the whole thing, not even the whole thing, that's not even, like, that's the whole point, is it's not the whole thing. Part of the thing with Sabran is that she is the queen of this territory, this queendom, first of all. I love the word queendom. She is the leader of this queendom, and part of her duty as the queen is to bear children, to have a daughter, to continue her line. That is what she has to do. And Samantha Shannon managed to write a plot line for this woman where it was part of her story. It was an important part of her story to bear children. That became a very important part of what she had to do, but it wasn't the only thing about her. And that, I think, is what gets missed so often, especially when it's royalty. It was not everything. Even to the point where she loses the baby and it devastates her for a multitude of reasons, which isn't the least of which is just like, oh, I was supposed to have a baby and now I don't. But there's a line that I love. One of my favorite lines in the book is when it's way back when Loth, you know, and Iad and Sabran are all reunited, and he, you know, asks her about the child, and he says, oh, are you going to tell everybody that you lost the baby and that you're barren now? And she tells him, she's like, we need to come up with a different word for that, because barren makes it sound like I'm a field that will no longer have crops, and that's all I was good for. And he apologizes. He's like, I'm sorry, like, I didn't mean it that way. But she's like, yeah, no, barren is a terrible word, because I'm still a person. She is still a person outside of her. I love that so much. The way that her storyline was in part heavily focused on bearing a child, and yet that wasn't Like, that wasn't the extent of her as a person. She was a whole person outside of her own uterus. And that, I think, is often missed when you have these storylines about continuing royal lines. And I was like, that's how you fucking know this shit was written by a woman. Oh, I love when women. So you have somebody like Eid, who's your, you know, prototypical fantasy, like, super badass, you know, and you're like, when you think badass female character, you think somebody like Eid, somebody like Tanae. And yet she also has a character like Sabran, who isn't necessarily a fighter, who doesn't have these powers, who doesn't have a dragon, who doesn't have, you know, all these special things about her that, you know, the mage and the dragon rider have, but she is in her own right also still an incredibly strong female character. And I think that's so important. And I just have a lot of feelings. So, Carter, you do bring up the juxtaposition between pregnancy and the lost apothecary in here. Pregnancy was a political tool here, whereas an apothecary considered pregnancy a really important aspect of womanhood. Exactly. It was a part of who she was. It was a useful part of who she was, but it wasn't all that she was, and it wasn't completely tied to her womanhood. When she lost her ability to have children, she did not lose her womanhood. She did not lose her importance to her kingdom, her queendom. She did not lose really anything about herself other than the fact that she could no longer bear children. And I think it was just handled really well. I think it was written very well. I think it was integrated into the story very well. And overall, I just really, really liked it. So I think she just has a really great breadth of female characters that made me very, very happy to read, especially immediately following Empire of the Vampire. When I tell you this was like the most healing reading experience after going through 700 pages of Empire of the Vampire, and I was like, I needed this. So, physical locations, the world building, the magic system, I'm very invested in, and I'm very interested in the prequels that are gonna come out, which, congratulations to Samantha Shannon. As of today, she finished her manuscript. She just posted on Instagram that she finished and sent in her manuscript for the next Priory book, which is gonna be a prequel, and I'm guessing it's gonna be about the other trees. I'm very excited. But yeah, so she finished that one today, which is about 30,000 pages longer. Not pages, oh my god, words. 30,000 words longer than this one, as of right now. That will change through editing, but as of right now, yeah. The mulberry tree has you in a death grip. Was that the one that they found desiccated on the island? Because I want that story. There's so much. That's the other thing, is like, in 800 pages, she told a very rich story and still left room for more. In 800 pages. Like, but not to a point where, like, I finished it and I was like, oh, I need the rest. Like, she made a one and done perfect story, but then there's more. And I can't wait. That Tanae thread, yeah, to be fair, she said that was, so at the end, the, like, blood on Tanae's side, where you're like, wait a minute, she did say, I think a couple weeks ago in, like, an AMA on Instagram, that, like, that was a thread that she left in there for a potential sequel, but there's no, like, yes or no on whether that's for sure gonna happen. I want the Witch Lady Clearland and the Mulberry Tree. That's what I'm really fucking hoping the first prequel is. Like, the Hawthorne Tree, also interested. Thank you for reminding me what the hell it was, JLap. Also interested, but, like, that one that had so much of it, like, in there, and, like, the foundation laid, I want that. I want that so bad. I'm hoping we'll get it next year. I'm hoping that's a 2023 release. Oh my god. Okay, so what do we chat about? We chatted about physical locations, characters, female characters, multiple points of view and switching between them. Didn't like the ending with Tanae. It was, like, too soft, too wishy-washy. I just need answers. Okay, so the ending. So, not even I'll say, Samantha Shannon would say that I think she thinks the ending is the weakest part of the book. Not even necessarily the ending, but the fight. So, Samantha Shannon does not like writing battles. She said before that she does not love writing action. She doesn't love writing big battles. And I think she made a joke that, like, she realized at a certain point in drafting Priory that she had written this huge book that was all leading up to a battle. And then she was really mad at herself for having done that because she doesn't like writing battles. So while I don't have an issue with it in Priory, I think because it was so good and because I liked it so much, usually in a book that wasn't as amazing as Priory, the action at the end, the big final battle, would have annoyed me. And it took me maybe like a couple weeks to realize that, because it didn't even occur to me at the time. I just loved it. I loved everything about it. I loved the book and I was hype about it. And then I was thinking back on it later, and one of the things that and V, you brought up Kingdom of Ash. It's a huge problem that I have with Kingdom of Ash and with The Court of Wings and Ruin. Rachel, I know you've read those as well. One of my biggest gripes with those is that they all lead up to this big battle and then nothing happens. And everything goes perfectly, everything works, everything's fine, nobody dies, everything's great. And usually that drives me insane. Usually it would be one of these things where I'm like, you've spent this whole time leading up to this battle, talking about how insane the stakes are, how high the stakes are, what could happen if you go wrong, how we're not all for sure gonna live through this. And then at the end, everything's fine. And there are no stakes after all. And usually that would kill me. JLap, in the two books that I mentioned, yes, she's terrified to kill main characters. She won't fucking do it. In this one, it didn't bug me. And to this day, I can't really settle on why. I think that's one of two things. I think one, the rest of the book was so good that like it didn't even occur to me, and like I'm willing to forgive that. Because I think I kind of noticed, but then I didn't. Like, it was fine. Yeah, like it's epic, and then everything goes perfect and it's fine. And it's overall a pretty quick thing. The other thing is that she didn't necessarily spend the whole book going on and on and on about how we're not all gonna live, which is in the Sarah J. Maas books, she does constantly. She talks about how there's no way we're all gonna live through this. You know, we're not all gonna make it out of this. We're saying our goodbyes. We're not gonna live. And Ian and Sabran have kind of a moment, but even at that point, like, she never straight up says, like, we're all gonna die. Like, it's quick, it's over, but, like, she hadn't spent chapters and chapters of emotional development on, like, talking about how they were all gonna die. So when they didn't die, I was kind of okay with it. The one, I will say, the one that killed me was Niclay's. Motherfucker literally slept. He slept through the whole battle. Are you kidding me? Oh my god. He slept through the whole battle. I think he could have died in the final battle and it would have been fine. Maybe that would have been too easy for like a character that people didn't like, but that motherfucker slept through the whole battle. Oh my god. So yeah, I will say the final epic battle is maybe not even what I would call one of my least favorites, but it's just not one of my favorites. I think it was pretty fast. It was pretty easy. Everything went really well, which is like epic, good for them, but it kind of lowers the stakes a little bit. And I think she has publicly said, you know, the same thing. She said that it's something that she's working on. Battles aren't her favorite thing. She recognizes it as being a weaker part of the story, and that for her other books, you know, if it happens in another Priory book, she's aware of it in the future. She did use a line saying that if they wanted to live through it, their best chance was to defeat the Nameless One at his rising, which they did, and then they all lived. There's a sweet spot between the two that would be perfect, but it's very hard to do. I will say, one of my favorite fantasy series for action is Aragon. I think Aragon does battles really well, where you don't necessarily have main characters dying left and right in these huge battles, but they still feel very high stakes, and they still feel very intense, and he writes pretty long battles. Someday I'm going to reread this book. Also, so these are my little tabs. Let's see. I have little tabs. They don't really mean anything. The different colors don't mean anything. I just marked things that I liked. Like every time I liked a line or liked a particular scene. My favorite scene. I don't know if I can narrow down a favorite, but a favorite scene. When Loth and Iad show up in Innis and storm the castle and rescue Sabran. And then, oh my god, I can't even get into it. I'll talk about it for forever. We've already been online for like an hour, but holy shit. I think that one is up there. Tanae finding the stone is up there, and that is specifically because of the playlist. Okay, so I could like keep going on about all the things that I loved, but we've been on for like an hour. I was like, let me talk for like 10-15 minutes and then move on. So we're gonna move on to what you guys thought. I'm super curious to see what you guys thought. Okay, so again, I have not opened this. So I don't know how many forms are gonna be in here. So we're gonna find out together. Oh! We had some new ones. So again, for reference, I think our best month we had 14. So we've had a bit of an increase. Your review is like 5 sentences. Look, here's the thing as well. Do not ever feel the need like you have to review something like super long. You don't even necessarily have to write anything in the review if you don't want to. If you want to write a super long review, that's great, but like don't feel like you have to. Most of them aren't that long. It's fine. I like the occasional long review because it's nice to like see stuff like that. But the short ones are okay too, because we get to kind of get a feel for what you thought of it without having to spend 18 minutes on it. That's what I was trying to get out. I was trying to get the hiccup out before we started. I knew that shit was coming. Anyway, okay. So 21 of you did give a name. 4 of you are cowards. So let me tell you before we get started. If you did not give this book at least 5 stars, or at least 4 stars, we're gonna fight. We're gonna fight. That's just how it is. So if you gave this book less than 4 stars, you're in trouble and we're gonna fight. I'm just telling you now. So, 80% of us did physical books. That's fucking wild. We have never had a spread like that, except for on the one where there was no audiobook. So 80% of us did the physical book. 4 people, 16% did audio, and 1 person did the ebook. Steven, you're our usual, you do ebooks all the time, right? Audiobook review, what did y'all think? 4 stars for the narration, 5 stars. Somebody really didn't like the narration. So my friend is listening to the audiobook right now, and overall, she said she liked it, but she just got to the part the other day where Firadel comes out, and whatever voice the narrator used for the worm, she was not digging. So there is that. Oh, what did you guys think? Reader was awesome. Clear voices did not detract from the story. Accents are all over the place. One of the monarchs had a southern Colonel Sanders-esque accent. The accent for Tanae sounded Nigerian. Beyond the accents, the voice acting for some of the characters was just unpleasant. I think the different accents make sense though, right? Because they're all from wildly different parts of the world. Maybe it just didn't work in practice. I don't know. Good narrator, easy to identify voices. All right, did everybody finish? 92% finished. 2 people DNF'd. Now, whether that was an actual DNF or it ran out of time is the question. Let's see. How far did you get? Somebody got about 50%. Somebody just started, 25%. All right. Got bored. This is the one we're going to fight. We're going to fight whoever you are. We're fighting. We're literally fighting. Got bored. Somebody's getting banned. Ran out of time, still reading. Generally, yes. What would make you finish? I know that pretty much everyone has enjoyed the book. I'm wondering if my expectations were too high going into it because of that. I was buddy reading it with a friend and she's planning on continuing on. If she raves about it, I might consider picking it back up. Fighting. Fighting words. Alright, y'all, I'm scared. When I tell you, I'm afraid to scroll down. I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't want to scroll down. I wasn't worried until just this minute, and now that I have to, like, look at it, I'm worried. Oh my god, okay, so just remember, I gave this 5 stars. It was one of my top 5 books of the year. This is absolutely why Addie will never be in book club. Absolutely, we're not doing it. We're not doing it. But, so this is as close as we're getting to Addie at this point. Alright, we're just gonna do it. We're just gonna rip off the band-aid. Okay, we got a good spread. Yes! Alright, okay. Whoo! Good start, 48% of us gave it 5 stars. Alright, let's move on from there. Another 20% gave it 4.5. Another 8% gave it 4. So, 2, 7, 19. 19 out of 25 said 4 stars or higher. We're good. 3.5 stars. 3 stars. Who wants to die? I just gotta ask, who wants to die? Who gave it 2.5 stars? So who wants to lose a limb? It's gonna happen. There's gonna be a physical fight. There will be a physical fight. 3. I'm actually shocked. 3 2.5s. I simultaneously really want to read those reviews and really don't. I want to know, but also I don't. I'm very curious. 3 people, all of whom are probably part of the 4 who didn't put their names. All right. Okay. All right. Okay. It happens. Okay, would you reread? Most people said yes. I'm actually really surprised that that's a yes, given how long it is, and the fact that I know at least some people in book club just straight up don't reread. So most people said yes, 4 maybes and 5 no's. That's okay. Whatever. Okay, so more specifically, the story, 5 stars, 4 stars, 3, and 2. Some of y'all are testing me. All right, so mostly 5s, some 4s, a few 3s, 2 2s. I see a blue sliver. I see a blue sliver in this chart. Do y'all see? Do y'all see why we're not gonna do Addie? Do y'all see why we're never gonna do Addie? 60% said 5 stars for the characters, so overall majority liked the characters. Some 4 stars, 4 3 stars, 1 2 star, and 1 1 star. I am wildly curious to read this person's review. I really hope. Also, if you're here, please don't feel like put upon because I'm saying I'm gonna kill you. I mean, I might, but also, you know, it's just me. The blue sliver is just for Niclays. Took down everything. If you're here, run. All right, writing style. I like that we can all pretty much agree it's great. Like, nobody went lower than a 3. 56% 5 stars, 24% 4 stars, and some 3 stars. All right. Okay, all right. That was a little jarring. I'm gonna tell you, that blue was a little jarring. I didn't see that coming. I really didn't see that coming. So, okay. Oh my, do we see how tiny this thing is? Let's go. Oh my god. Oh my. Y'all, we're gonna be here for a while. We're gonna be here for a minute. Okay. All right. Okay. There's gonna be a character limit. On future reviews, I swear to God. All right. God. Okay. Greetings. I see that almost everyone has mentioned an outstanding essay quality review of the book, so I'll keep it simple. Engaging characters, world building, and story. The audiobook narrator is fantastic as well. Is this you, Strider? You can really tell the author put a lot of love into making this fictional world, the duality of dragons, the epic scope of the book, borrowing from various cultures, etc., and she's open to the idea of more stories from the same world. The main thing I really want to say, since we're a bit past the anniversary month of book club, thanks for starting this, Emma. It's been a wonder to share thoughts with others online regarding this whole lineup of books. These get-togethers have given me an additional reading boost. So far, 3 books have been outside my comfort zone. Salt and Sorrows, Night Circus, and We Hunt the Flame. And technically, 4 books, Addie. And finally, may we continue to support newer and lesser-known authors. Aww. Thank you. What a nice start. I don't know if that was the first review or the last one, but what a nice start. Thank you. I'm really glad that, like, people wanted to come out and do this and, like, hang out and talk about books. Like, that was really nice. Like, it was, like, not super expected. I kind of thought this was going to be, like, a thing that might fizzle out super quick, but we have been doing this for a year now. That's incredible. That's crazy. So, thank you. I really appreciate that. I'm also glad you really liked the book. Oh my god. Okay. I love this. Okay, I've read Harry Potter, Game of Thrones, Wheel of Time, and The Witcher. This is probably my favorite fantasy book. It's easily within my top 5 favorite books I have ever read. I promise you I didn't read this, or I didn't write this. I might have to reread old favorites to come up with a definitive ranking, but I digress. This book has many of the classic fantasy tropes and excels at all of them. Political intrigue is top-notch. There are many named and interesting characters, a fantasy world that feels real and alive with a vibrant 1,000-year history, evil dragons, good dragons, magic artifacts, and swords. All we needed were some elves and a magic ring. This book knows it's a fantasy novel and doesn't shy away from it, and modernizes a genre that had seemed to me to only be able to exist in a modern context with subversion. This was truly a refreshing story. Love that! Love that. Another thing that makes this world feel alive is the history of this world and how that impacts the characters in the present. The history is meaningful. The Knights of the Seven Virtues is the religion of Innis. It's how they construct their royal court. It's the lens that lets their people see their lives, and it impacts the characters' decisions. Religious fanaticism and the criticisms of it are one of my favorite tropes in fiction. If you're new here, I trip over words a lot. This is going to be a running thing. The White Cloaks in Wheel of Time, the Prophets of the Covenant in Halo 2 are some examples of where I think a story elevated with religious fanatics as antagonists. I think it gives depth to antagonists in a story that's compelling and makes them understandable. The court's belief of Sabran's ancestry is what gives her ruling power. The religion is what Ingrain Crest is willing to kill and die for and feel justified. The subversion and toppling of that religion is one of the biggest sources of conflict in the story, both from an external perspective with Crest, Ead's own faith and the need to conceal or be labeled a heretic and executed, and Loth's internal crisis of faith. History is also meaningful in the East, with the Sea Ban to resist red sickness, and that affects Tanae's entire existence. This history created the laws that she breaks in the story and suffers the consequences. These two important pieces of history are imperative to the current state of the story. The reason East and West have little political affiliations, the reason Ead must keep secrets, the reason Tanae takes desperate actions because the history of the world directly affects them. This is a really well thought out way of me saying the religion was important in this book and it worked. That's what I wanted to say. Thank you. That's a good explanation of that. This is its own paragraph, but Ead's and Sabran's relationship is chef's kiss. A fantasy story with female protagonists and a sapphic romance? Sign me the fuck up. 10 years and not one sunrise more. Oh my god, when Jesus, I would wait 50 years to have one day with you. Oh. When will it be my turn? Also want to shout out the dragons. I thought they were handled excellently. The story illustrates the mythic nature of them from both a Western and an Eastern perspective, in the book and in real life. Fantasy books need more dragons, just saying. Now, there are some things I didn't like about this book. These are more nitpicks than anything else, but I have one major criticism, which is that Nicolaes Roos didn't need to be a point of view character. Bold assertion! He's not particularly likable. He doesn't have a particularly great character arc. Most of the time, he's a passive character that stuff just happens to, and he deals with it, and a lot of it seems convenient. Like when he's left to wander the streets and runs into a friend of his, or that pirates happen to show up on the beach he's on. There's a lot of convenience that can be overlooked in a fantasy story when the things that happen involve people who are direct descendants of legendary figures and straight up look like them as the will of the gods or whatever. It weakens the storytelling when it's used too much, especially when the character of Nicolaes Roos is not some direct descendant of a legendary person, just happens to mosey on into where the story's happening. The only time he shows any agency is when he tries to blackmail Tanae, which is all for naught because Susa and Suliard are executed anyway. Devastating. He gets his dragon blood and scale just by being around, and those aren't even the way to create an eternal life for Elixir anyway. Nothing he does in the story provides any sort of knowledge to the characters or the reader, except when he figures out the Nameless One has a weak point. That's a pretty big one, though. That's a pretty big one. Throughout the entire story, he makes selfish decisions until the very end where he does the bare minimum. His internal monologue is interesting, and it shows he's an interesting and complicated character, but with such a long book, he isn't needed as a point of view and could have just been a side character in my opinion. I was expecting some sort of redemption arc instead of one great act at the end, or, to earn forgiveness, but not redemption. Let's be real. He's still shitty and deserves worse than losing his hand. I mean... Or I was expecting him to get over his fear of death and somehow sacrifice himself to save Nyamathun, but no. Bare minimum. Gets a happy ending. I mean, He gets an ending. I would not call it a happy ending. He gets an ending. In summary, this book is a great fantasy novel. It does this while also being a modern fantasy novel with female protagonists, sapphic romance, characters that change the traditional systems of fantasy because they are inherently flawed. It also accomplishes being a modern fantasy novel without going dark and gritty for the sake of realism, like Game of Thrones or The Witcher, which sometimes makes those books difficult to read. This book is fantasy and celebrates that with dragons and magic swords while acknowledging historical criticisms of the genre and addressing them in a meaningful way that makes the book fun and refreshing to read. The book's themes, I lost my place, are advanced with strong female characters and protagonists who buck tradition when presented with new information to enact positive change. The characters are compelling, the world is alive, and I want more. 5 stars. I just want to say, round of applause for me for reading all of that, honestly. That was very good. That was you, right, Star-Lord? That was our second. You guys, we have 25 responses. That was the second one. It's potentially the longest one, but that was 2. Easy 5 stars. The world building felt effortless. I love the world and visuals Samantha created. Oh, we're on a first name basis with Samantha over here. I love characters that evoke emotion, and I felt that with all of them. The romance between Sabran and Iad was chef's kiss. I will cherish this story and this experience. Perfection. I'm so glad. I'm so glad. I appreciated Shannon's feminist approach to the story. Sure, the patriarchy is present in the world of Priory, but it's a world where women can earn the respect of their male peers and isn't treated as unusual. So one of the things, and I cannot believe I didn't think about this because it's one of my favorite things about this book, is that there are moments in the book where Tanae especially is just shat on by the people around her, especially early on in the beginning. Sabran gets a lot of shit from a lot of people. Iad sometimes even gets it. But, like, at no point was any of the insults thrown at them, any of the ridicule thrown at any of them because they were a woman. Nobody in this book was ever insulted for the express reason that they were a woman. Do you have any idea how refreshing that is? Especially, it was the first thing I noticed with Tanae because there's that asshole that's like in the beginning they're in that same, you know, group, like training group or whatever, and she got shat on for being poor and for having no family and for like being an orphan all the time. Never once was she shat on for being a woman. Nobody. Oh my god, that's wild. That's fucking wild. Tanae was insulted for being poor and I related. Like, they literally just insulted her for being orphaned and being poor, and I was like, what? I was literally thinking about throwback to bitchily. Oh my god. Oh my god. Anyway, the one character whose job is essentially to procreate wildly exceeds that role, and like all the other characters is fully fleshed out. In this world, women don't exist just to suffer, unlike in the works of another author that I might have mentioned a paragraph ago. We love to see it. By women, for women. I love the characters. Each of them had a depth to them and were written beautifully. I think my favorite character was interesting. As a favorite character out of everybody. I mean, I love Loth. Interesting. A courtier who had no idea how the world could be, and the way he just goes with it was a lot of fun. Initially, I did think that Loth and Iad might get together. Clearly, I was wrong, and it was so much better. However, I couldn't give it 5 stars because of the slow start. It was a long time before I really liked the book. So I went into this book knowing 2 things. I knew dragons, and I knew lesbians. And the way that we were trying to figure out who was going to be the love interest for so long, because I think the synopsis might indicate that it's Iad and Sabran, but I don't read the synopsis. So I didn't know. And, like, I think either Emily or Allie was, I think it was Allie in the beginning, was trying to be like, I'm pretty sure it's going to be Sabran. And I was like, there's no way. There's no way it's going to be this chick. And then it was. And I was like, literally my first thought was, because they were both POV characters, I thought it was going to be Iad and Tanae, and like there was going to be a meetup somehow, and that was going to be it. I really didn't see the Sabran thing coming for a while because I didn't like her. And then, okay, all right, here we go. Like I said before, I think my expectations were too high going in. I kept waiting for the moment when it all just picked up and got exciting and made me not want to put it down, but it did the opposite, and I was just never in the mood to pick it up. I loved Iad, liked Tanae and Loth, but other than that, I really wasn't a fan of anyone else. Especially not Nicolays. I hated him. This really is just the roast Nicolays time. I'm not sure if it was the pacing or I just have a short attention span that was not conducive to reading this book, but something just wasn't clicking. And it stinks because I wanted to like this so badly, especially because there were dragons. I mean, I guess, you know, you can't win them all. You can't win them all. The chat hates Nicolays. Everybody fucking hates Nicolays. Everybody hates Nicolays. Oh, I don't know if this is going to be good or bad. I don't know. I don't know if it's going to be good or bad. I'm afraid. I'm afraid. Oh my god, thank you. Okay. Whew, okay. I was scared. I was getting scared. I loved this book. The story, the characters, everything. I kind of wish there was a bit more of Tanae and Nyamathun, but I'm not complaining. I can totally see that. I wanted more Nyamathun. The relationship between Sabran and Iad was just perfect. I liked all the characters, but if I had to pick, I would say my least favorite was probably Nicolays. But his story really did get me in the feels. It started off slow, but maybe about a quarter of the way in, I just couldn't stop. I loved how the story flowed and came together in the end. Okay. I loved the premise. Exquisite. Loved the characters. I would die for Tanae, Sabran, and Iad. Die. The way that I would murder a man for these people. I loved the relationship with the dragons, the depths Samantha went to explain the religion, the backstory, the world building, all of it. The side characters. Kit? Done. Dunmata Morosa? Goodbye. Elder Vara? Send help. They were amazing. This was just... It swept me away. It really did. I am unwell. I'm getting teary thinking about it. I don't know how to top this. How is Samantha going to top this? What do I even read now? How do I finish Frankenstein after this? I'm just in awe of this work. Dude, I felt the same. I was like, where do I even go from here? Like, honestly, what do I do? I can't even remember what I read after this. I have it in a list somewhere, but I don't know what I read after this. All right. At the risk of being exiled from the Priory of Skysnet, I have to say that I was underwhelmed by this book. Here we go. Here we go. We had to know it was coming. We had to know it was coming. All right. I should have had, like, actual alcohol. It's mostly an it's not you, it's me kind of situation, as high fantasy tomes are not for me. I hate what most people consider good world building in high fantasy, where the author will sprinkle in extraneous info dumps, e.g. random history lessons, lists of every food at a banquet. It's usually useless and has no impact on the characters of the story. Except in this case, the history lessons were all important. The history lessons were all important. Ignoring my general aversion for this type of book, I found that most of the characters came off as dull and flat. I think we just found our one-star characters. Okay, I'm curious. The characterizations of their personalities and motivations were, for the most part, very surface level. The exception being Sabran, who was a fairly developed and complex character. I'm begging fantasy authors to replace world building with more character building. There was both! That said, I think Shannon shines when writing the interpersonal relationships in Priory. She got me to care about Ian and Sabran, Tanae and Nyamathun, and Loth and Margaret. As for the story/plot, the pacing was pretty uneven. I never felt any momentum build up in the plot. A lot of the peaks would occur suddenly and end just as abruptly, so it never felt satisfying. I feel my criticisms betray my overall impression of the book. I didn't really dislike it at all, it's just kind of mid. Actually, I hated Roos and all the Roos chapters. Fuck that guy. We're fine. We're fine. You know, it happens. Sometimes you disagree. Sometimes you don't. And sometimes you missed all of the character building that was in here. I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm fine. It's you? Steven! Steven! Usually I can tell yours. Almost every month I've been able to pick yours out of the bunch. I just want to talk. I just want to talk. Bro. What happened? I'm sorry you didn't like it. The characters are not one-dimensional. Get out. Get out of here. I am betrayed. I truly am. I truly am. This is a moment. This is a moment for me. I'm not fine. I'm not fine. What the fuck? Two in a row. Two in a row.
You're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never understand.
The double whammy. The double whammy of both of these reviews.
Unacceptable!
Oh my god. Oh my god. You know what? This is why we do this, though. This is why I read your reviews, to roast you. No, so that we can, get differing opinions. Get differing opinions. Loved it, loved it, loved it, loved it. This was a book I could get lost in that felt so real, even though everything is made up. Something about the care and obvious time given to fleshing out all aspects of the world building and characters made the story feel both epically sweeping, yet also heart-wrenchingly intimate. Personally, I never had any issues with how parts of the world were introduced, and not once found the story to be too confusing. Even after a massive story, there's still so much to be explored in this world, and I love that. The characters, the feminism in this book is excellent, especially because we get to see such a variety of strong women who are still vulnerable, still broken. Sabran? Excellent. Id? Wonderful. Tanae? Fantastic. The obvious outlier, at least from the point of views, is Nicolaes. Upon reflection, several weeks after finishing the book, I can see his importance and value to the story, even if I found him annoying as hell while reading. Still, his tender moments with Jennart still managed to get to me. The plot ebbed and flowed, and while it had slower parts and faster parts, I was always wrapped with attention and never expected an 800-page high fantasy novel to be fast-paced. Overall, this book deserves all the praise, all the awards, all the love. Not really what I was expecting at all. I know a lot of people compared this to Game of Thrones, and it is in no way even close to that. There were just so many things I didn't like about this book. I didn't know where we were going with that. I'm so disappointed because I expected a lot, and there were so many amazing reviews that hyped up the book so much. It felt more like I was reading a history book than an actual story. There is a catastrophically immense amount of info dump, and I honestly didn't care for it one bit. I admit, I skimmed over most of it, which is probably the reason I was a little confused later on. But honestly, it's not my fault. I mean, skimming is kind of your fault. You can't expect me to still be invested in a book with more than 400 pages of scene setting. I had originally thought there would be a very fascinating and complex plot since the book is so long, but I was far from right. The plot is quite basic and was so slow and so underwhelming. I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm fine. Most of the pages were used on the description of useless things, in my opinion, and not nearly enough on the characters and their thoughts and emotion. What? Romance? No. No, I need a moment. I need a moment. What do you mean, what romance? What do you mean? This is it. What romance? I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm doing great. This is why we want to get differing opinions. All right, I'm fine. I'm fine. Did I read a different book? I couldn't connect to a single character. There was one time in the book when there were literal pages and pages of description, and then a character death and only half a page. I literally had to go back and reread to make sure the character actually died because it wasn't emotional or given any real importance, even though I'm quite sure it should have been. I'm guessing they're talking about Kit, because that's the only one I can think of that was like super fast. All in all, I was really disappointed. Maybe if I read the book properly, I would have different thoughts on it, but I couldn't connect to the story or the characters. I mean, it depends on how much you skimmed. And I'm gonna guess there was a lot of skimming if you missed the whole romance plotline. Okay. Okay. All right. We knew we had some negative reviews. We knew it was coming. But yes, again, if you're here, don't take it personal if I roast your review. We all have differing opinions. 'Tis okay. This book is so good. It usually takes me 50 to 100 pages to get into a story, but Priory had me hooked from the very first page. I'm speechless. Oh, that was the last one! Yay! Oh my god, we finished! I cannot believe we made it. That was a good one to end on. That was a good one to end on. Oh my god. So. Oh! Did the mic catch that? That was so much! That was aggressive! Oh my god. Like I broke something. Oh, Christ. Quotes! Okay. We mortals all have faults, except for you, of course. My master's only flaw is that he tires himself with worry for his people. I love this because it's the fantasy equivalent of a job interview. My only weakness is that I care too much. That neck crack had more impact than the clays! Yeah, he's dead! He's dead! I mean, he's not, but like, he's on the ground. He's fighting for his life. There is courage, I think, in open-mindedness and thinking for oneself. If you are a witch, then perhaps witches are not so wicked after all. I would live alone for 50 years to have one day with you. The way that I was, like, simultaneously devastated, but also so happy, but, like, mostly devastated by, like, their ending. Oh, I loved it. Also this! No woman should be made to fear that she was not enough. I will send you away with my blessing, Tanae, if you promise me one thing, that one day you will forgive yourself. You are in the spring of your life, child, and have much to learn about this world. Do not deny yourself the privilege of living. I fucking love that man. I love that man. Okay, but yes, let's go look at our average score. You motherfuckers with your tools are gonna bring it down. Okay. Let's see if I remember how to fucking do basic math. Hang on. Let me check. Let me check this against our other... Let me go find my post where I talked about how our book club scores went. I'm pretty sure... Where is it? Oh my god, it was so... Okay. This literally tied for our highest rated book ever. It is a complete exact tie because it's an average of 4.32, which is the same score that Vicious got. Our average score for Vicious was a 4.32. Oh, man. Well, there you have it. A 4.32 average. It is tied with Vicious as our #1 best book club vote ever. We did it. Da, 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 da. So in February, we are reading The Gilded Wolves by Roshani Chokshi, which I am very excited for. Keep an eye on the Discord later tonight. I'll put up our spoiler schedule. I still haven't put it up because I was having Emily see if she could figure out it for me because I didn't want to look at the pages and risk seeing spoilers. So I will put up the spoiler schedule for this one pretty quickly. And yeah, this will go quick, so I'm going to wait on this. I'm really glad to finally get to it because it's been on my list since November, I think. I bought the whole series. There's books 2 and 3 right there. I bought all 3 of them because I know that they're going to be good. So I'm super excited to get into this one. I will see y'all a month from today because I believe the first Friday in March is also the 4th. So I will see y'all on March 4th for this book when we're done. I'm very excited. So thank you guys so much for joining us for our 1-year anniversary of book club. We've done 13 books, you guys. We've done 13 books. That's crazy. And this was great. This was great. I'm so happy that so many people liked it. I'm so happy, even if you didn't like it, that you gave it a chance. And thank you all so much for reading Priory the Orange Tree. My voice is absolutely shot. I'm gonna go get more water and some food, and I will see you guys on Tuesday for our regular stream schedule. So, good night. Have a good one. Read something good this weekend, and